a couple of points there just to, before we get into preventing. What Wayne just described, we showed you two different exploits. Both of them were trying to go for S3. We could have as easily gone for RDS or DynamoDB or anything that takes IAM credentials, right? We're just surfing IAM to find ways to exploit sources of data, to get access to those things, illegitimately. And you can see that this is entirely possible. And we showed you two different kinds of lateral movement today with IAM. One is within an account, and that's bad enough. But the other is across accounts. So when you think about your security posture in the cloud, I would recommend that you think about it in kind of two ways at the same time. One, you definitely want to do things like constantly review your IAM roles and policies, particularly those that are assigned to resources that are running in your environment, and follow the principle of least privilege. But there are some other mechanisms. S3, for example, has something called bucket policies. And when Wayne was doing that attack from his laptop, he was coming in from an external IP address. So the first bullet here, use S3 bucket policies. You can set up a bucket policy on AWS that limits the IP address CIDR blocks that have access to that data, no matter what IAM permissions they have. So things like that are really worth looking at. So you've got the, I need to make sure I keep track of all the permissions I've granted in the form of IAM, and then look for ways you can kind of throttle that back, no matter which permissions are granted for things like S3. List access is dangerous. It is extremely dangerous. And you need it as, my kind of rule of thumb is you need to know everything in your environment. By the way, you probably don't. Most cloud users simply are unaware of all of their infrastructure, who's running it, how old it is, et cetera. That's why in Fugue we have the visualization capability so you can go see it. But you need to have perfect visibility, and then you want to deny the bad guys any visibility, because that knowledge of the terrain, of the topology of your cloud infrastructure is what they're looking for, and they're looking for any cracks in it. As Wayne showed, going from dev account to super dev to prod, you can't even feel like your dev accounts don't need to be secure, because if they have relationships, even indirectly, to production accounts, you need to be aware of those. And those actually are paths that can be traversed. Do not use AWS Star. Avoid cross-account access wherever possible, right? You do need to use cross-account in some cases, but when combined with AWS Star, we just showed you a pretty devastating attack based on that combination. EC2 instances aren't necessary to get hacked or lose data. Wayne just showed you stealing all that data from his laptop by leveraging those credentials. In some cases, again, with things like S3 bucket policies, you can prevent that. But don't think if you're not using EC2, you're safe. AWS account numbers are semi-private. Just consider them public. Security by obscurity never works. Bad guys are clever. Someone in your organization has somewhere put probably an AWS account ID in something that went outside the organization. It's going to happen. Changing account IDs is really hard. It's not something, you can't rotate account IDs, right? You'd have to move all of your infrastructure and recreate it. So just assume they're public and believe that every bad guy in the world has them, because they probably do. CloudTrail is not going to help you here. It might tell you after the fact that you've been hacked, but it will not prevent these bad things from happening. And because these attacks can be so devastating and S3 is so fast, as with the attack a couple of weeks ago, where an RDS, I find this one really interesting. The attacker broke into an old EC2 instance and created a new RDS database out of an old RDS snapshot to steal data. That's something that could never happen in the data center. Build a new database cluster in 30 seconds. So these are the kinds of things that the bad guys are doing now.